Welcome to Decoding the Conflict Mindset. I am so excited to bring to you a return guest. Hanna Hasl-Kelchner actually appeared over a year ago talking about workplace issues from an attorney as well as a business perspective. And what she shared with us back then led to me asking her to come back again. And largely because she has also now published a book called Seeking Fairness at Work. And I had the opportunity to do a preview of her book, and I was so amazed and excited about how she brought so many contemporary issues together in a very current, spot-on literary work based on real events, real situations, and real people. She touches on anything from the Me Too movement to Black Lives Matter to quiet quitting. And Hanna comes to us from a very interesting background. Again, as an attorney, as a business expert, her no-nonsense approach is grounded in hands-on business experience. She grew up in an entrepreneurial family, much like I did, and ran a business before even reaching the age of 30. And now she has decades of experience as a practicing attorney. She's now a trusted advisor, and her international business and legal career have spanned government, private, and in-house practice. She's worked with companies that were growing, shrinking, emerging, winning, struggling, private, public, large, and small. And so Hanna brings to us incredible insight. So I invite you to stay tuned for our next episode of Decoding the Conflict Mindset. You will not be disappointed in what Hanna has to share. There's still time to reach out, let your friends, let your colleagues, let your business leaders know Hanna is someone to listen to when it comes to decoding the conflict mindset. Well, welcome to Decoding the Conflict Mindset, and I'm Dr. Debra Dupree, your host and founder of the DCM podcast. And I'm delighted to have back with me Hanna Hasl-Kelchner. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm delighted to see you, Dr. Deb. This is wonderful. It's always great to chat with you.
Well, thank you. I feel likewise, and I'm particularly excited about your invitation to review your book, Seeking Fairness at the Workplace, or at work, right? You say
right,
it.
right.
Seeking Fairness at Work, and I've said this to you offline. I'll say it very publicly here. I am just so impressed with the scope of what you covered and bringing in so many things and being so current with so many of the issues that we're dealing with. And so, Hanna, I would love to start off by just talking about old leadership versus new leadership that's needed for today's workplace. What have you found in your years of experience?
well, things have changed. And I think sometimes it's like this earthquake. You feel the little tremors and then it stops and you're like, okay, we're back to normal. And there really isn't, the old normal isn't here anymore. Things have changed dramatically. I mean, we have, 5 different age cohorts in the workplace, 5 generations. And the younger generation has different expectations. They grew up with different expectations, all the technology, but also, all of the economic changes. And with COVID hitting the hardest for the people entering the workforce at that time. And so there's been a lot of reevaluation about, well, what's the meaning of work? And even before COVID hit, we had the Me Too movement, which, people aren't putting up with that nonsense anymore. Had Black Lives Matter movement, which again is out there and is saying, hey, we need more empathy. We need more acceptance and inclusion. So you put that all in a big mix and it's like, well, now we have return to work and everything's no. It's changed. And if you want to go back to those old ways, you're going to get pushback, and you're going to get pushback in more ways than you expect. And, one of the things I talk about in the book is, Gallup poll does this wonderful workplace a survey every year. And some new numbers came out, because it's the current year. And employee engagement has reached a 11-year low. Now what all the different things are that go into it. But I mean, people need to look at managing and leadership a little differently with more awareness of what's happening in the workplace from the employee perspective. And that's really what I try to highlight in the book as to, there's all these little subtle things that are happening, and the employees aren't necessarily going to speak up because they may be too afraid. They will obey until one too many things happen, and it's like, can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in the meantime, there's a lot of conflict that you hear about that needs to be mediated and smoothed over. So, it's a big mix. It's a big mix.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm reminded of a conversation I had earlier on a different podcast as far as, it really does beg a mindset of being inquisitive, curious, courageous, and to be proactive and not just, I think I shared the example earlier and I'll share it here, is that for so many years doing workplace mediation and helping to resolve employee differences with their supervisors and managers, oftentimes the phrase from managers and supervisors would be, well, they didn't say they were bothered by that, or they didn't say they needed something different. And it's like, oh my gosh, you're the person of the higher authority and education and experience. And so it's really important that we pay attention to these kinds of things.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, you're pinpointing about communication. I think there's really a responsibility on management to pay more attention because of the difference, the power imbalance. It's going to be hard for people to speak up, especially if they get the message either verbally or through body language cues that, oh, you're not supposed to ask that question, or not now, I'm busy. And then after a while, they just pull back. And you're not going to get the best work from somebody if they're always, hesitant. So yeah, I think there's so much that can be done to update communication skills as people acquire greater leadership responsibility so that they can have better workplace relationships. And it's not easy, and it's so hard because I think some people think, well, hey, I can talk, I'm good. Yeah. In reality, it's like, yeah, but maybe we could do a little bit better in order to connect with an employee, to have a better understanding of how we might be able to better support them to do the best work possible for us, right? And so, yeah, there's a lot that can happen there, a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I know we're at an all-time low, or an 11-year low, as you mentioned, and yet I have to admit I get a little bit of enthusiasm, excitement about the opportunities that we have ahead of us. And for all of our managers and supervisors or leaders, whatever level they might be, I want to point out that for so many years, we promoted people based on their technological background, whatever content, subject matter that they knew and they were good at. And because they were good at it, they got promoted.
Right.
But they did not have the skills necessary to manage people. And that's where we've fallen really far behind.
Yeah, you make an excellent point. One of the people that I interviewed on my podcast a while back was a sales professional. And he said, people want to promote somebody into the head of sales because they've got the best sales. And he says that could be dead wrong because that high performer may not want to share their sales secrets. And you really want somebody who's going to be supportive, that is going to be able to teach. Mm-hmm. And the high performer, especially one that's strictly on commission, where's the incentive? Where's mm-hmm. the motivation? And I think that's another way that organizations can look at employee engagement to say, well, what are we incentivizing? How are we incentivizing our leaders to bring out the best in our employees, or only looking at, the quarterly, monthly numbers?
Right. Yeah, that's tangible evidence, but it's the intangible, like, you talked about already. I know in your book, you talked about the biggest source of employee discontent being unfair treatment at work.
Oh, yeah. And it operates on multiple levels, and I think, one of the things that motivated me, because even when I was practicing law, any case that comes before you, underneath it all is this basic sense of injustice and unfairness. And
Mhm.
unfairness sounds like such a squishy topic, like, well, it's, Humpty Dumpty, it's whatever I say it is. But that's really not true, because we do have certain expectations just in social relationships about how we want to be treated,
Mhm.
with honesty, with respect. And those things don't always happen in the employee workplace. And so, pulling that apart to say, well, what are the unwritten rules? Because when you go in, oh yeah, here's our policy manual, here's the org chart, have at it. And then you suddenly find out how things really work. And, don't talk to Hannah before she's had her coffee in the morning, things like that, those little nuances, but they make a huge difference in how we communicate and how we can share information with our coworkers and departments, and even our clients. And so those things you learn sometimes by the school of hard knocks. And so it operates on so many levels in terms of accessibility, the bias people may experience, and the little nuances, because relationships are nuanced. And I probably the biggest aha moment for me was the research about power differentials.
Mhm.
How when people get more power and acquire more, some of the very characteristics that allowed them to develop influence in terms of relationship building suddenly go out the door in terms of empathy, in terms of awareness, in terms of their own sense of importance and
Mhm.
invulnerability. And so it's just it's fascinating what happens. But to me, it's like you've got all these resources on the payroll. Why not unlock them and unleash them? Because hopefully you've done a good job in hiring. So why not, give them a good opportunity to bring that to the fore?
Yeah, all excellent points. And on that, and I wish I could remember the source, and I apologize that I don't right now, but I do remember, and I'm actively reading, researching also on employment factors and employees and things like that. And so organizations may do an excellent job of hiring,
Mm-hmm.
and I've certainly worked with some organizations about how to, fine tune that and really develop the kind of, questions for the person that they want to hire that fits in their organization. But it doesn't stop there. Where a lot of organizations fall short is on their onboarding. And
Yes.
I mentioned that because the study I read about was that, everybody's on their best foot, when it comes to the interview process, and let's promote the company, and this is why you should hire me. And then they get in, and then they quickly see, the dysfunction that exists, and then how whatever was being talked about in the interview doesn't necessarily really play itself out in terms of ongoing communication, support, access, all those things you just talked about.
Yeah, and you're so right about the onboarding process. And to me, what's even worse is when somebody shows up the first day and then the other folks haven't been told about, oh, you're here. Yeah, we heard you were going to come, but their workspace isn't prepared. They don't have the access information and so forth. And it's like going to a hotel and they lost your reservation. It doesn't make you feel very welcome. And there's just so much I think that employers can do if they think about it. And
Mhm.
and one HR professional said, really, the onboarding process starts the minute they accept the offer, because they may still be getting offers from other people they've interviewed with. And so
Right.
that's really a golden opportunity to say, Dr. Deb, welcome to the team. We're happy to see you. And, we're looking forward to you joining us. Can't wait. But even then, it's an ongoing process, because the other back end of onboarding is the continuous professional development,
Yeah.
which isn't so much the short term, 30, 60, 90 days, but,
Mhm.
that continues to help develop people, because it's one of the few assets that can appreciate over time if it's properly managed, as opposed to depreciate like our computer technology.
Well, it's an investment, a return on investment. What do you get from it? So it is that continuous process development. So if there were a couple of things, maybe two or three things that you feel today's leader really needs to know and understand about today's workplace, what would those two or three things be?
I think one of the biggest things is remote work. It's here to stay, and I understand that it's difficult because we want to go back to the way things were, how many years ago. And to the extent that we have remote employees, that they
Mhm.
take the extra effort to try and communicate, because film is a cool medium. And you really have to express yourself more. And you don't have all of the body language, the fidgeting that can happen under the table or the nod and all of those types of things. So to be more verbal about confirming what you've said, what you've heard, what the next step is, just good meeting management. And not allowing people to hide behind their screens. I had one person tell me, oh, yeah, they were working with a client and they had an employee who had their camera off and their microphone off. Well, hello. Are you going to be there or not? And if they don't need to participate like that, because they're not going to be called on, for part of a presentation, then find another way to get the information to them so that they're not left out. And that's more people working remote feel left out. So I think that's one thing. Number two is develop more awareness. We think we know, but we're so busy doing our own thing. And people are expected to do more with less. So I understand the pressure that management is under, and especially the tremendous financial pressure if you have a publicly traded company or if you have other investors, even privately, who are knocking on your door saying, hey, how are we doing? It is a lot of pressure. But remember, you can build your company if you build your people. So the more you can be aware of where, you may be sending the wrong messages, maybe you aren't listening enough. People are trying to tell you something. Are you discounting it, or are you listening to the facts, or because you think you know better? Anything we can do to improve our awareness on any of those levels, I think can make you a better leader. And third, I would say don't micromanage. Give people the autonomy. You hire them for a particular skill set and mindset. Let them use it, because otherwise, that's just more work you're doing. Do you really want that? Be careful what you wish for. So those would be three things.
Excellent points. Excellent points. Yeah. There's so much in there. One of the things, that, we've heard a lot about is quiet quitting and going back to what, what's changed, since we first started dealing with the pandemic, and what do you feel that leaders really need to pay attention to in that mode of quiet quitting? Why do good people leave? What's causing that?
Well, I like the way we've coined the term quiet quitting. I don't really think it's a new concept. I think people have been doing it all along when they realize, hey, I'm going gung ho, I'm giving 500%, but there's Susie or Jim over here in the corner, and they're just not pulling their weight the same way. Why am I killing myself? Maybe I can do a little less. Or maybe there's other things happening in the organization where I feel I'm not being fairly treated. So yeah, I can pull back a little bit. And sometimes it may just be a matter of self-preservation why people they haven't quit necessarily, but they're not really fully engaged 100%, which is what we're really after. So I don't think it's really a new concept. It's gotten a new name. And I think it comes down to what's the work environment. Is it fear-based? Too many of them are. And if it's fear-based and people feel like, well, I can't speak up, I'm going to get shot down, they're going to shoot the messenger, I could be blamed, I could lose my job because somebody's not listening to me, they're getting a huge piece of the communication skills, then I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to mind my business, I'm going to keep my head down, all those phrases that you've heard, right? And so those things are not helpful. And the quiet quitting, I think, is triggered by a fundamental unfairness in the workplace, which triggers the fear. It's one thing to say, oh, we have to, we have to trust our workers. They need to trust us. Well, leaders have to earn that trust.
Yeah.
They may respect the title that you have, but if the person who's wearing that hat isn't living up to what's expected of them, then it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough, and you're going to lose employees, which is, the retention. Now you can do the whole hiring thing again, which is not an inexpensive process in terms of time and resources. So better to keep the employees, first of all, hire the right ones, and then do your best to keep them wanting to come to work, looking forward to Monday instead of grinding their teeth on Sunday afternoon.
Oh, yeah, that's another figure I or maybe it's in your book. I can't remember now. You tell me. But about how many people, experience this increased anxiety and this increased sense of stress on Sunday afternoons in thinking about going back to work.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so, okay.
Yeah. It's huge. LinkedIn, which, many of your viewers could very well be participants in, did a survey, and it's amazing how many people really they call it the Sunday scaries, you know.
That's
We're just thinking about the work week ahead. You're starting to, and even when it comes to vacations, some people think, oh, I'm going to take a week off. It's going to be great. Well, think about it. It takes you about, my view is you need 2 weeks, because
yeah.
you need about 2 or 3 days to stop jumping every time the phone rings or pings, right? Because there's an email or some text message for you. So then you can finally relax and enjoy, and connect with whatever it is you're doing. And then towards the end of vacation, you start to put all those layers back on, because you're steeling yourself for everything that happened while you were gone. And so, out of 2 weeks, you may get 5 or 6 real restful days to where you can recharge. Yeah, it's sad, but it comes back down to the workplace.
Yeah.
I mean, think about the activities that you really enjoy, that you look forward to, right? Why can't we create that kind of environment? Because I'm willing to bet that a lot of people watching this enjoy their profession, enjoy their business expertise. It's just the circumstances that they get to practice it in puts them in a straitjacket and makes them grind their teeth at night. So,
Yeah.
we can fix that. We can fix that. But it really is incumbent on leadership. It upsets me when they say, well, it's low employee engagement. No, the employees start off, great guns their first day of work. It's their reaction to the environment that they're encountering. So if we can improve the environment, even taking baby steps, the rest will follow.
Yes, yes. In that regard, then, uh, when you talk about unfairness or seeking fairness at work, what's sort of the underlying principles there? You mentioned, we've talked already about the biggest source of employee discontent is unfair treatment. And so what, why does fairness matter so much? I mean, I think I know the answer, but why does it matter so much to
Why
us?
does it matter? Um, well, one of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to give it some legal teeth. And
Okay.
so I think it's helpful to view it in terms of the implied social relationship. If you think about any relationship that you have with someone, the people that you're closest to, and I don't mean because, you're supposed to because you're family or, related by blood, but think about your best friend. Think about a coach that you've had. They can tell you some things that maybe you don't want to hear, but you trust them because they're being honest and they're doing it in a respectful way. And so, there's two things in any contract, whether it's written or an implied one, and that's the covenant of good faith and the covenant of fair dealing. And good faith basically means you're going to be honest and you're going to keep me safe. And so in the workplace, that translates into a safe workplace, both physically and psychologically, and being honest. Now, that doesn't mean brutally honest, because the good faith part deals with esteem and being supportive. And so you're not going to get in the way of me doing my job or performing on the contract. Because if a vendor did that, you'd be all over them. But somehow it's okay because of power differentials with a paycheck involved. And so those are the things that are really sort of the standard, because what employees want is more than a paycheck. They want to be included in being part of something bigger themselves. They want to be treated with respect, and not have to deal with biases and microaggressions and being ignored. They want to be able to have access to the information they need. And that doesn't mean they get everything and anything they want. It's about being reasonable. And so when those types of things are out of whack, and there's poor workload management, there's poor communications, there's poor conflict management. Boy, that one really tanks everything, as you know, because it's like, well, I can't talk to this person, right? I'm getting nowhere. And it's like, okay, well, something's got to give. And so they
Right.
either leave voluntarily or they're, shown the door. And it's sad. It's just so sad, that waste. So I do think that there's ways to get your arms around what fairness is. And then once you do that, you can say, well, how does it manifest? Because it manifests in different nuances. You may have one horrendous big thing happen, but more often than not, it's those little death by 1,000 cuts which add up. And then one day something little happens and goes, well, it wasn't a big deal before, like the example that you gave, right?
Yeah.
It was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Someone told me about an executive assistant who had their name mispronounced all the time. And so she'd correct them. Well, they mispronounced it again. Then they thought it was funny. Like, she left.
Yeah.
I mean, how disrespectful is that? At somebody else's expense. There's other ways to be funny than to denigrate or debase somebody's name. So yeah, it's those little things, and that's why, coming back to awareness, I think if managers get a greater awareness of the impact they have on others, how they affect others, it can go a long way to making improvement. And that doesn't mean being inauthentic. It's those little things.
Well, they always say, the devil's in the details, right? It's the small stuff that we do. We don't want to sweat small stuff, but the small things matter.
Yeah, it adds up, and little things do mean a lot. You're absolutely right. And that's why, having excuse me, having a coach such as yourself help somebody with improving their conflict management skills can go a really long way to improving relationships. If people can feel heard, they're more likely to raise problems before they're expensive to solve, and instead of being right and wrong, it's like, we have a problem and we need to solve it together. And that's not always easy for some people in leadership. So I admire the work you do, and I'm happy to support it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that very much, Hannah. And a book like yours helps me. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've already referred people to it, or wait till you get this one, And I just think it's great. It's definitely going to be on my reading list for the classes I teach. That's for sure. And so, in as we wrap up, Hannah, I guess I'm curious if there were 2 or 3 gems that our leaders out there should take note and do something about, what would you suggest those are?
2 or 3 gems. To remember that fairness is about esteem. And even if you have to deliver somebody bad news, which happens, to learn how to do it with respect. Because if they're walking into your office or connecting with you on Zoom, they're coming in with their dignity. They should be able to leave with their dignity, and use it as an opportunity for a learning experience. And maybe it's the first time and there's an opportunity for improvement through some additional training or coaching or mentoring. Great. But if you've, reached your limit with that and it's just become an untenable situation, then do it with kindness, because everybody else is watching and it will get back and they'll hear it. And so it will have a ripple effect through the organization if you do the perp walk and have them, escorted out of the building. Or even if you're doing something ugly like terminating a bunch of people over a Zoom call, that I understand that you're not going to have tears in your office or tears on a phone call. But how would you feel if you were in their shoes?
Yeah.
So, do it with respect. It will definitely burnish your reputation instead of ruin it.
Yes, yes. Well, I was like to say, how you show up matters. And so as a leader, how you show up. And as you said, ripples through the organization, and people pay attention. People are watching, and people take note of how you treat others. And so, okay, when is my turn coming?
Exactly. I could be next, which just makes people pull back more and have less engagement.
Yeah.
So
and less trust.
And less trust. So be careful what you want. I mean, if you're really serious about wanting more employee engagement, look at the environment that they're working in, and just even taking small steps, because success breeds more success, and then you're going to want to do more.
Yeah. It's a domino effect, and it will keep coming back. or what I call the law of reciprocity. You got to give to get back. And you got to watch what you give because you might get it back. So Hanna, you mentioned your podcast, and we also mentioned your book. So everyone hears the proper name of your book now. I've got it right in front of me. Seeking Fairness at Work, Cracking the New Code of Greater Employee Engagement, Retention, and Satisfaction. So where do people find this excellent book?
Well, I would send them to Amazon. I think everybody's familiar with that. They can get it to you quickly. It's available in 3 different versions. So if you like an ebook and you want to download it on your Kindle, that's instantaneous. It's also available in paperback and hard copy. I know some people like the hardback, the hardcover books. It's just very traditional. So whatever you want, it's there.
Very good, very good. And say a little bit more about your podcast then.
About the podcast. The podcast is called Business Confidential Now, and you have been a guest. You've been a wonderful guest. And the goal is to help executives, managers, and entrepreneurs see business issues hiding in plain view that matter to their bottom line. And definitely, conflict management is something that matters to their bottom line. It can be costly, not just with employees, but with their vendors and suppliers and customers if it's not handled properly. So being able to do that, because, when you're in a situation like that, when you are in a leadership, you can't do everything at once. You can't know everything at once. So any gems of wisdom that I can impart through the podcast, I'm happy to do. And we cover a broad range of issues, conflict management being one of them, but it could be sales, it could be marketing, it could be a lot of things.
Great. Well, that's what running a business is all about, a lot of those things, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And one last thing, Hanna, I want people to know, how to reach you. I know that you're on LinkedIn, so that's one way to look you up and connect with you there. And then What about your website?
I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
A website.
Oh, website. Yes. Well, I have a businessmo.com is one website. I have one for the book, seekingfairness.com. And of course, there is one for the podcast, which is businessconfidentialradio.com. So 3 different websites. I'm also on Twitter, and the podcasts are also on YouTube. So you can find me there as No Nonsense Lawyer.
Very good. No Nonsense Lawyer. We have her right here. Hanna.
Well, I don't do the lawyering anymore, but the no nonsense is still there. You can tell.
Well, I can tell that, yes. And I want to say thank you for all your wisdom and experience that you bring to today's work world, because there's just so much to learn from someone who's had your insight and experience. And thank you for doing what you do. Because again, I just can't compliment you enough on your book. I just found it a delightful read. And I know it will land in the hands of many who will benefit in terms of making life different as we move forward in our different work world of the future.
It's definitely different. Thank you.
Yeah. Pleasure. Thank you, Hanna. Thank you for coming back again. I do appreciate it. And to all of our viewers and listeners, again, if you enjoyed this, please let us know. Comment in the comment section below on YouTube, and then also pass it on. Pass it on maybe to that leader who maybe is not such a great leader, and say, you should listen to this podcast, and maybe give a gift of her book to that very leader that could use some improvement, okay? And so again, thank you for joining us on Decoding the Conflict Mindset and being part of our community. Imagine a world where our leaders actually know how to manage conflict. Well, I hope you enjoyed listening to Hanna Hasl-Kelchner as much as I enjoyed interviewing her. Again, her book, Seeking Fairness at Work, has brought so many great things together. I encourage you to get out there and read it, share it, pass it on. On that theme of fairness at work, I'm delighted to bring to you our next guest speaker, Blaine Dunai, who is the founder and principal of the Workplace Fairness Institute out of Toronto, Canada. And I met Blaine some 20 years ago as he attended one of my conflict management mediator training workshops. And we've stayed connected throughout the years. And so I was delighted when I saw him take some of his ideas about conflict in the workplace and actually turn it into a Workplace Fairness Institute. And so mark your calendars. In 2 more weeks, Blaine will be here with me on Decoding the Conflict Mindset. You will not want to miss out on this. Please pass this on, particularly to the leaders, the managers, the bosses that you know in your worlds. And this is an opportunity to learn not only in what Hanna has just shared with us, but what Blaine brings to us, because he has a remarkable e-learning program that I'm going to be asking you about. And so again, workplace fairness, not a new concept, but it's certainly a timely concept in terms of what's going on in our challenged world of today's workplace. I'm Dr. Debra Dupree, founder and host of Decoding the Conflict Mindset. My goal is to change and shift the way we think about conflict as an opportunity, not as something to run away from. Let's learn, listen, and grow, turning confrontations into conversations. Thank you for being with us, and we'll see you soon.